My name is Nicholas Ngige.
My name is Sebastian.
I am Panavi. I'm Grace Maringanga.
I'm Ruth Diane Stevenson.
Jen Magadi.
Samioka Dewa.
Christina Vivid.
Safi Uzaye.
Jaja Uzaye.
Agatha Kinethia.
Faiza.
Dr. John Mwangi.
My name is DeAndrea Weeks, and I am with Virginia for Africa.
I am with Parental for Africa.
I am with Parental for Africa. And I am with
Parental for Africa.
I am with
I'm with
I am with
I am with Parental for Africa.
Started. Yeah. With that, I would just go ahead and ask our guest speaker to just introduce herself. I know I've said a lot about you, but you can miss one, two words that I may have missed out.
Thank you so much. Just like Mr. Jeffrey said, my name is Priscilla Wachira, and I am a licensed professional counselor intern being supervised by Miss Villarreal. And so it's a privilege to just even have this certificate and this license to be able to impact lives. And thank you so much once again, Vitendo, for having me. It's always a pleasure networking with you all the way from youth empowerment to mental health and so on. So having the opportunity to be on this platform is definitely an honor. And I'd like to thank my parents who are online and my siblings as well. This journey to becoming, and I will say this, throughout this Zoom meeting, it was not a one-man show. And for each one of you all that are listening, your journey to becoming has not been an individual one. Yes, it's felt like it's been you, but there definitely there's been a tribe of people empowering you and encouraging you along the way. So today I would like to thank my tribe. God bless you and keep you. And here's to many, many more memories to come.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Awesome. I don't know what's happening with my camera. It's turning me off.
We can see you.
You can see me?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, good. So with that, I think I'll jump into my first question. I appreciate that you've mentioned that, it's always a tribe. And
Yes.
We always say that when we glorify when we see the final product, but there is always a lot of big team behind the champion, even the winner. When you're coming out to win the whatever the race is, there is always a team behind.
Most definitely.
Yes, we appreciate that there is a big team that is celebrating you to be able to see what you've been able to accomplish even writing this book. And I think for those who don't know, the book we're talking about is Seated: My Journey to Becoming.
Mm-hmm.
And what a title. I think I love that, but I know there's something behind it. I'll ask the first question I wanted to ask you, maybe what inspired you to write this book?
Yes. So like you said, the title is Seated: My Journey to Becoming. Background story. The title itself was supposed to be Becoming, but I will get into that section later. I just wanted to put that in the forefront of our minds. What inspired me it was definitely a God moment. We were talking with Mr. Jeffrey earlier, and throughout the Bible, you can see that a lot of the people that God called, they weren't particularly ready. It's not as if they had the tools in their backpack, ready to lead, ready to inspire generations to come. And I remember watching TV one evening, and one of my good friends, Mr. Roy Kamau, he is actually the publisher of the book. He had just celebrated another author. And I remember saying, that is so awesome. I'm excited that he has started this coaching program. And I was celebrating the author herself also. And I heard distinctively God say, it's your turn to tell your story. And immediately my mind thought, no, there's nothing for me to share. There's not a story that I believe was worth putting into writing and putting into 10 chapters total. However, simply in obedience, I chose to move forward. And I believe it was in the process of becoming, as I was writing. Obviously, when God calls you to do something, he's going to work that lesson out in you as he is doing it. And so the title, before the title even came to my mind, I was walking out that process of becoming as I was writing. And I believe it was in that moment of writing and figuring out how my story would pan out that I really saw God's hand throughout my life, because I was able to put, I would say, pen to paper. As I typed out specifically chapter 1, he took me back to basically inception in a sense. And it was in that moment that there was an aha. Wow, this is why you called me to tell my story. It was something that was bigger than myself, right? God was using me to inspire someone else who was probably stuck in their journey. They knew they needed to become this. They knew they needed to reach this specific destination, but they just did not know how. And so throughout my writing, I believe, to answer your question, that is where the inspiration came from. God himself. Not man, not dad, no one else, just God, simply.
That is awesome. That is awesome to hear that, at least. And sometimes when you writing or putting some great ideas or great thoughts, sometimes you may not even know when God is speaking to you.
Exactly. Exactly.
Having that ability to be able to have the conversation and hear God speaking to you and really getting the message and hearing the voice of God, it's something that I would say it's not many people have that, and we happy to hear that. That's what would work for you.
Yes.
And I don't know, maybe you mentioned a little bit about the title. You wanted it to be the becoming.
Yes. I knew I believe when I hit chapter 6, the word becoming kept coming to me. And I was like, okay, that's the title, simply. However, there was a moment where I realized I was moving ahead of God. And I was hitting chapter 7, and I had this new thought to introduce. And it hit me. Oh my goodness, if I introduce this chapter, I have to go all the way back to chapter 1 and now explain to my reader this new thought and then unpack it a little more in chapter, etc. So I believe chapter 7 was where the title Seated itself came to fruition, because God really had to show me that I need you're becoming. And someone may ask, and this is where the book will answer, how do you become but you stay seated? How are you allowing God to inspire you? How are you allowing God to move you through the different seasons in your life without action? How are you seated? What does that mean to be seated? So I can't give that away. That is definitely, you'll have to go to Amazon, purchase, and the answer does come throughout the book. But that is throughout chapter 7, everything clicked. And I was able to now bring the title and the subtitle together, Seated, My Journey to Becoming.
Great. And I think, like I said, I captured the first part of the page of your first book, and I see that I came across something that you mentioned about you should invite yourself to a surrender once again, and in the process of becoming daily, remember the equation from the introduction. You say courage.
Yes.
Over empathy plus vulnerability equal becoming. Explain that.
Yes. So becoming equals courage over empathy and vulnerability. In order to become, you can't just say, I'm becoming. There's that courage within self to get to a place where you're like, I am ready to move and grow into my destiny and grow into the man and the woman God has called me to do. And that requires surrender. Surrender doesn't come easy. There is a form of courage that is needed in order to properly surrender, I believe, because you can surrender half-heartedly. You can surrender with doubt. You can surrender with a lot of different emotions there. But to fully surrender, there's a courage to where you're unfazed by whatever limits and barriers may come your way, because you've surrendered to the King of Kings. At least for me, it was that surrender to God, right? And so in that process of surrendering, because of the courage that I was able to muster within, I had to become empathetic with myself. Empathy is when we hear people's story, we can sympathize and say, oh my goodness, that is terrible that happened to you. That's sympathy. Empathy is saying, you know, I do not understand what you've gone through, but I'm willing to sit here and walk this journey with you. I'm willing to adjust myself into your position and enter into your story. Not especially an emotional confrontation. Why did I act like this? Why did I speak like this? There's a lot of why questions that come up within us naturally as humans. Mm-hmm. But in that space, you have to be empathetic with yourself and say, you know, Priscilla, yes. Why did you respond this way? However, you're on a journey to becoming, and invited my reader this journey. So I know it's dicey. A lot of, for those that may not have the clinical hat, because I do write it from a lens of a therapeutic counseling psychology lens. So in the book, I do break down a lot of the terms, so you won't feel as if it's going over your head. I do define courage, I define surrender, vulnerability, empathy, but for the sake of time, just to explain why those three, I had to explain it that way. But if you read the book, you will get a better explanation for sure.
No, I agree with you. I like the way you have actually explained those in the book. And I think you, like you say, it's hard to explain in a very short period of time that we have. But I think when somebody goes to get the book and be able to read it, I like the way you break it down. I mean, I can read a section where you say, now when someone chooses to openly share with you who they are through, who they are through their life story, that is humbling experience. And I believe that the foundation on which such an experience is built is vulnerability. This word might as well have been a curse word for me, but I threw it around to everyone else and demanded that they had to operate in it. When you read the book, it is a lot of information that you're able to break, and sharing your story. It's something that I find it's no better way to put than when you say using. When you use the word vulnerability, because unless you're vulnerable, you allow yourself to be vulnerable, then it's going to be hard to be able fast to come out of, become, to be able to go to be the person that you want to be, because it's through that vulnerability that you're able to figure out how you become the person that God created you to be.
Yes, most definitely. And like he read that section of, I didn't like the word vulnerability when it came to me. Mm-hmm. However, I believed, and I was an advocate. I believed I was an advocate of vulnerability, because I told everyone, you have to be open. And people would share their story and they would be vulnerable, but I was sitting on the other side of the table, not wanting to share mine. Mm-hmm. And I believe that was inauthentic. Yes, there's a time and a place to share their story, to share your story. However, when the time came, how does this situation make you feel? instead of giving the vulnerable answer, I gave the intellectual answer that I felt that they needed to hear. So I do discuss in the book through various chapters how I believed I was inauthentic to self. I was a false advocate. You can't ask people to do things that you're not willing to do. And as a mental health counselor, for example, if I'm asking someone to open up and share with me their life on the other side of the couch, I need to be able to do the same. Obviously, in different, but I think it's important for all of us. We can attribute that statement to various areas of our lives. We can't ask people to walk through something or to work on themselves in this specific area if we have not done so ourselves, or at least help someone do so.
No, I agree. When you mentioned that, I just remember, I think it was chapter 2 or chapter 1, where you say that when you are invited into someone's space of vulnerability, it isn't the time to start building flow charts or solution maps for them. Instead, it is time to sit still, mentally, actively listen, and hold a space for them. That's deep.
We, putting myself in that, we're very solution focused. I guess you'd say naturally as humans, there's that survival in us. However, when it comes to emotions and someone bearing their all to you, as kind as it is to say, aha, as you've been talking, I already made up your solution. As kind and as honorable that is, a lot of the times, research has shown 60%, if more, the person really just wants you to listen. Because when you listen, it's simply, there's Dr. Brene Brown. She is actually the woman who inspired me to journey into mental health. She's a pioneer of vulnerability research, and she talks about empathy. She says empathy doesn't have a script, and most of the time we want to give empathy a script. However, empathy is actually holding space, and holding space is simply sitting in that space with that person and communicating the most powerful words anyone would want to hear, and that is, I am with you and I see you. Because people begin to heal the moment that they feel heard. And so if you have sat through a difficult story with someone and they ask you, they may turn to you and say, thank you for being here with me. And your response is, thank you so much. So what I think you need to do, immediately you've taken away, in a sense, their moment to be vulnerable. And you've turned that vulnerability and that, we call it in the clinical field, sacred space, and you've turned it into now a treatment plan. And the thing is, the treatment plan, yes, is going to come, but not in that moment. In that moment, it just needs to be, let's just sit here, feel the emotions. And sometimes we don't have the right words to say, which is why Dr. Brene Brown says empathy does not have a script. There aren't words that you can rehearse over and over. Sometimes silence is enough. And once the other party is ready to now be given opinions and advice, they will probably invite you to do so. And I think a lot of the times too is reading the situation. There's also the time to ask, is it okay for me to give my opinion? Invite yourself into that space because you were invited before. So it doesn't mean that you're automatically, okay, I'm invited, I can have full control. No, still respect that space and keep inviting yourself as you're asking questions. May I provide an input? Are you ready? Are you in a place where you're ready for me to provide any advice? You're still providing that control for them to navigate you through that difficult situation. And if they do say yes, then it also signifies that they're now mentally and emotionally ready to take in now the flow charts that you have been processing in your mind, which brings me to active listening. It's another clinical term that's used. Active listening is I'm listening to you without thinking of the next step. Right now, you're telling me that you feel sad. What I'm hearing, and something that you can say to someone to allow them to know you're actively listening is reflecting the feeling back. A lot of the times I will say, so I'm hearing you say that you're feeling distressed. I'm hearing you say. That statement in itself is it acknowledges to them that you are hearing them. And another thing, so we can move on, is limiting why questions, because why questions put people into they take them from the emotional space to the intellectual phase. If you have someone that's going through a crisis, in that moment, we're not wanting to bring their mind quickly to the intellectual phase. Because when you approach someone with why, well, why are you feeling this way? Naturally, the mind will switch from emotional to mental because they feel the need to defend. So
now that's a good point that you mentioned, because I'm thinking on that now. When we talk about now the issue we have with the mental health in our community right now, I can see the connection there, because if somebody comes and tells you he's going through this and the challenges they're going through, I think we jump into providing a solution. With what we think should be, you need to do. And sometimes we may find, like you said, somebody may feel like a little bit more judged because firstly you didn't listen. You just, and you mentioned a little bit about about the biasness that we have when it comes to, because I've had young people in America, they don't listen to the parents, and because they are acclimated to the American culture, they won't forget the African culture. Now, when somebody comes and tells a young person come and approaches you with some of the challenges they go through, the first thing you jump into making that biasness, you think, oh, this is what we're talking about. This is what I've all people been talking about. But I mean, do you think maybe from your experience, the challenges we have and why people in our community are not willing to share and talk about their mental health situation, could that be connected to us not being able to be active listeners?
Exactly, for sure. And I think another thing, let's just build a foundation, is, and I use this word not negatively, ignorance, in the sense of, if you have never known, you do not know. And so if it was not modeled in this generation, that's what carries through, right? And so there's that teaching moment for anyone. And I think specifically in our community, it's also, a lot of it could be, where do I start? There could be that aspect where some people do know that mental health is an issue. They know all of this. They're supportive of other people, but in their household, this is too much. Where do I start? And it brings up feelings of angst, anxiety. And there's this, at least from the conversations I've had with a few people in the community, is emotions are messy. And they can be, but it goes back to, if you have not been taught how to properly navigate and work through and communicate, it all boils down to communication. And specifically with parents, the generation obviously now is different than when they were growing up. And so it requires that active listening. Let me step into your world to understand why you're facing these struggles. Because another thing too is diminishing I'm a firm advocate of no one's emotions should ever be diminished. We all have a right to feel what we feel. Yes, there are some rational emotions and there are irrational emotions. We know with the irrational emotions, it could be simply, I just feel like I want attention and this is just how I behave. It's never been modeled for me to act appropriately, etc. However, there are these emotions in the sense where this is making sense because this person isn't feeling heard. This person is feeling shut out. This child is trying to honor their parents. And I talk about it in the book. The most difficult thing for me was balancing the line of honor and obedience. Because a lot of the times I refused to talk about what I was going through. And I would then project, the term that I use in the book, project, I would place my emotions onto my family and believe that they didn't care. They didn't want me to do this, but I was acting irrationally, because how can I project an emotion if I have never even given them the space to come into my reality? It's one thing if they had said, we don't want to hear, please be quiet. But because that had never been modeled, now I was acting irrationally. And in my projecting is like a projector. You're showcasing, you're covering someone with your emotions, and you've never communicated it. And that was unfair. And so now bringing it back to the parents and the child, if the child has felt shut out, then they will begin to find attention in other ways. And so what it requires is the parent to now, although the emotions may be hard, although this is new territory, mental health was not modeled for you. What does it mean to hold my child and cry? Yes, it feels new for you, but I bring it back to Dr. Brene Brown. She has a quote that says, sitting in the discomfort is where healing begins. And so if we're going to say emotions are messy, all just flat out, then let us put on the courage, put on our hats of courage, and sit in the discomfort with whoever it is that we're with, and communicate that message of, I'm going to sit here with you until we come to an understanding. And so with a parent, that may need to be what needs to be done is, okay, I'm going to actively listen. I'm going to sit here and you share with me everything that you're going through. Because then you as the parent have the right to say, I've listened. May I now interject and speak? Because it's, the child in that sense, hopefully they can say, you know what? Yeah, you can, because you've let me speak my piece. I feel like I have removed and I've taken off that burden. Yes, you can speak now. That, I believe that's where that dialogue begins. I go back to the quote of people heal when they begin to feel heard. Throughout my experience in counseling, I've never had a client who said, you know what, you didn't hear me, so I'm not going to let you counsel me. No, they let me continue that relationship with them as their counselor because I'm hearing them and I'm reflecting back those emotions. So if it's with the child, I believe with parents, it's just understanding and, okay, this is going to be new for my brain to capture. I've never learned what it means to reflect feeling. So let me read up on that. Maybe it's going to be some research, just general research. What does it mean to reflect feeling? What does it mean to empathize? What does it mean to encourage my child when they're having intense emotions? And so all of this is learned. However, I go back to the aspect of ignorance and not a negative lens of, if you don't know, you just don't know. Yeah, so that's the piece that I would give is if emotions are intimidating, that's okay. That's your reality. I cannot speak against that reality because you've never had emotions modeled properly. Maybe you grew up in an abusive home. Maybe you grew up where emotions being expressed meant yelling. We always yell. We're constantly yelling. Or no talking back. I'll give you something to cry about. That's a statement we hear a lot. Oh, nataka kulia, sawa. I'll give you something to cry about. Oh, you should be happy. You have food. You have a house to live in. And it's not that the child is being selfish. It's just, they just want that emotional comfort, right? You've already met the foundation of their needs, security and safety, but have you met the emotional need, right?
Wow. That is. I feel like when you're speaking, and I look at the challenges that we're facing in our community today, I think you really perfect match to have this conversation, because I've heard your dad talk, and you are now speaking not as a child, but also as an adult.
Mhm.
And you have combined it from your experience as a child who is an immigrant, but also not just an immigrant, but also you have your, and I think this may be another topic when we may be able to discuss the challenges that you went through because of your head wrap,
Mhm.
and the being an immigrant, and also not just being unique in the American community, but also within our own community. It's a topic that I think we may be able to go deep into that. But I think the part that I feel like you really feel becomes a perfect match of what to address them or to discuss, or maybe be in the panel to discuss some of these things that we're having, because you bring it in the both perspective of
Thank you.
a counselor, a child, an adult, and somebody who have lived the life. And you are able to share your story. And I think I've captured a few of it when you mentioned about the go moments that people want to push you, that the parents want you to push you, that, but until the child be able to understand that they're doing it because they have a good, they think they have a good thing with goodwill for me. They meant good for me when they are pushing it. But until that child be able to understand that they're doing it because they have a good, they meant it for me.
It's you, and being a youth leader as well, that experience that I've had, and having my sister role model that well, to where now I'm able to lead confidently. I've had those experiences to where a lot of young people will approach us and say, I know that they mean well. I love them. They love the parents. Literally, the piece that they want is, I don't want to sit through a lecture about how, I used to walk for miles, and I was the first top in my class. I did this for my grandmother. I woke up every day, and look at you, you have all of this. In that moment, you have literally demeaned the child and said, your experience doesn't matter. Yes, those are facts. You have not had to walk through what I went through as your parent. You do have things better. However, it's all about the delivery. Saying, I believe I'm hearing you say that this, and this, et cetera, et cetera. And then you can reflect and say, when I was your age, I didn't go through these things. Yes, I did have to do a lot of difficult things that you're not having to do now. And that is a blessing. So how you've delivered it now is you've kind of said, I'm hearing you. Let's relate. When I was young, I really didn't have to go through this. This is terrible, but we're gonna navigate this together. Thankfully, I have provided you with the security where you don't have to do the things I had to do, because I can't. Maybe the parent could say, I can't imagine having to deal with these problems when I had to wake up early, when I had to walk 5 miles to school, when I had to do this. So you can bring in that experience, but you haven't torn down that emotion, because the child was about to share something, but now you've hit them with the flow charts, the facts. What you're saying doesn't matter. And yes, sometimes it could be that what is being said may not be what we would call priority in the moment. But still, something that my dad did very well was he would let us know something wasn't a priority by asking, how important is this to you right now? So it gives you a responsibility to say, it's very important, because my voice is shaking, I'm crying. I will not be able to have a proper conversation if I don't address this emotional apple in my throat. I have to release it somehow. And so there were times where I would say, it's not that important. I just wanted to address it now. Well, is there a deadline? Is there this? Yes, the conversation was different, but it still had to do with my emotions, right? Because either I was stressed about something or I was nervous about something. However, he gave me the responsibility to let him know, if it was important, can I meet you in an hour? Is that okay? Because I think what the child would need is maybe that responsibility of, wow, my dad is about to meet with me in an hour because I want to respect his time and he wants to respect my time. So that's another thing too that can be done, is maybe, because of course the parent may not be able to give that emotional support in that moment, but still acknowledging and saying, I'm rushing to work right now. Can we, my sister uses this, can we shelf this and talk about it when I get home? And also the parent can even say, please remind me when I get home. So now you've given the child this emotional responsibility to where now it's intentional. We're being intentional about conversations. We're being intentional about how I'm feeling. So you can pause things. It's about how you do it. Don't brush it off. Try and address it the best you can, but it's okay to pause and say, we can't do this right now.
Mm-hmm. Wow. No, I think you touched a very important part, and I think that is why I feel like I would recommend anybody who is listening to, if we are really to address the emotional, the mental problems we have in our community, we're going to be intentional. And you've mentioned that we have to be intentional to forget everything that we knew about the challenges of young people. And I think I was listening to a video, I think it was a speaker, a pastor say, many times parents nowadays, they are saying, oh, the children of today, they are really messed up. And he puts it there, he says, no, it's not the children of today that are messed up. It's the parents of today that are really messed up.
And to even cut on that, we were talking with, I believe it was my sister and a few other people, different conversations, but the topic was the same of, with the pandemic, we're very interested to see the emotional regulation, resiliency of now the generation that's to come. Because like you said, it's not the generation, it's a parent of that generation. And one thing that I have said in presentations that have to do with work, because I do focus on the physical health of things as well, physical and mental. I always tell people, as intentional as you are about meal planning, losing weight, planning that trip to Kenya, saving for that trip to Kenya, let's be intentional with our emotional health as well. Because we're very focused on the physical piece, right? If someone passes away, God forbid, we will be intentional about how we will go support that family spiritually. And yes, it does enhance their mental health, but the emotional piece, right? There's the mental and the emotional. Let's be more intentional with that, right? We've captured that spiritual healing piece, but have we touched on the emotional regulation? So as much as we're focusing on that outer piece, right? I have to get up at this time. I have to, pack and cook my tea. I pack my mandazis because I want to leave for work at this time. I want to do this, make sure the kids are ready. As much intention as we put to that, we can do that with our emotional health. Some people may be asking, okay, Priscilla, how? It could simply be having family time. Let's do a family check-in, right? And don't make it so inauthentic that it now becomes uncomfortable. That one day you say, okay, we're going to go have a family lunch and everybody's going to tell us how you're feeling. If you haven't modeled that, you may have to start slowly. But the thing is that you're starting. We can always celebrate the small steps to the big step. But just to bring it back, let's be intentional about our emotional health as much as we are about our physical and our financial health as well. So that's what I would like to encourage everyone. In the book, I talk about how in my experience as a clinical student, I believed that I had everything together. I was going to be the best counselor in the world. Something happened and it really was the reality for me. That am I really being a good counselor? Am I being a good advocate of people's mental health? And so one thing that I learned, one of the lessons I learned is the intentionality of emotions and mental health and and how that affects us physically. Because stress isn't just, it's a physical thing that is caused by an emotional disturbance. That's what we term anxiety in the clinical field as excitement without support. You're anxious because you have a lot of these things, you have a lot of to-do lists, but that support, which we would call structure, isn't there. So that anxiety then leads us to stress. We end up having headaches. We're drinking more chai. We're drinking probably 5 cups of chai every day. And if I don't have my chai, I have a headache. So we've conditioned our body to live with stress. Mm-hmm.
I'm listening to you and I'm like, we need to have a real conversation on this. And I think
I come to the circle meeting, everyone.
This is because when you really you're touching very the nerve that we actually all are struggling with here. Every time I work with a group of young people, and I talk to them, they tell me, oh, the parents 1, 2, 3. You go to the parents, you talk to them, they tell you, oh, young people of this today, blah. But I think one thing that I'm listening and I'm hearing from you is that we're so much focusing on the physical outlook, but we really neglect the emotional part of it.
Yes.
The mental part of it, our mental health, we actually forget about it, but it's that mental health. If it's become unstable, then the physical becomes unstable.
Mm-hmm. And there's this argument in the social science field of mind and body being separate. I am a firm believer that they are not, because we worship God in spirit and in truth with our whole body. And so it all connects, right? From what the Bible at least tells us, we're doing all of this in one accord. And so our mind and our body, yes, there is a struggle between the flesh and the spirit. Yes. However, when it comes to our emotional health, at least, the mind, for example, a simple thought we've noticed in the pandemic, a thought has led people into high rates of depression, high rates of anxiety, and those are being manifested physically through lack of sleep, lack of appetite, hygiene. People just refuse. Taking care of yourself physically just goes out the window because of a thought that happened in your mind. So you can't tell me that there's a separation of the two. At least that's how I argue it when it comes to when a client or anyone is standing in front of me telling me that, for example, why are you shaking? Right? People tend to shake when they're nervous. It's because the mind is activating on this fight and flight aspect, right? The body is reacting to whatever is causing you anxiety or stress. We may see it in a shaky voice. We may see it in sweating. So there's not a separation between body and mind, at least where I'm concerned. And in our community, I wrote a research paper about exploring the emotional cognitions and perception within specifically the African culture, and how we notice people pass away because you may hear, right? The pain in this person's heart literally led them to their deathbed. So there's those, we call it in the clinical field, psychosomatic, psycho, mind, somatic, body, reactions, to where your mind and your body are literally working together to form a defense system. You hear of people that get dehydrated and pass out at work and they don't know why. And by the time the doctor sees them, the doctor asks them, well, how often have you been sleeping? How often have you been eating? Oh my goodness, I haven't eaten for 2 days. Or I just had tea. So it's in that moment that we realize, oh my goodness, I haven't even paid attention to the physical aspect of me. And so my mind the body and the mind have had to communicate to say, hey, slow down.
Well, I hear actually there's a comment there that says, author Wachira has given us a culture art that we all needed it in understanding our family dynamics and youth and relationship. Wow. You got to bring her back. So
Thank you.
it is. I can feel it, and I can tell from the audience that the topic that we have, and I'm glad that you're able to put in that book. All this information you're sharing that is already on the book, which means if somebody is able to purchase that book, they will be ahead of all of us, understanding and getting to the clear picture, because you've actually used examples of how this applies, and maybe not just talking about it, but also providing some suggested recommendations and maybe how you can be able to tie those, the emotional part of it, the physical part of it, and how important it is to work on your mental health.
Mr. Jeffrey?
Yes.
I can't hear you. I don't know if that goes for everyone.
Can you hear me?
Yes. Okay, perfect.
Okay.
But there's an echo.
Is it better now?
Yes, much better.
Okay. Sorry, I think it's because there are two gadgets working on in here. So I think I'm looking at the time here, and if I don't control, if I continue with this the way I'm looking at it, I'm really excited because of this conversation. But I want to give us a reason to come back and continue with this conversation, but also to get people an opportunity before we come back to get your book and dive deeper into what the ideas and the tips that you're sharing using from personal experience. Maybe and I'm going to give a few minutes for people to ask questions, but when you're putting all this book together and putting this, writing the books, normally when I discuss with others, they will tell me, I had this idea, but when I started with this writing, putting this book, and now putting all this idea, by the time I came to finish, I've learned so many things, or something came up, aha moment in the process. In your situation, what did you learn in the process, and maybe what would you like to share?
Without giving the whole story, right? I think what I learned really was waiting, how to wait well. Because we could say we have a posture of waiting, but we could be waiting impatiently. We could be waiting with resentment. And so I bring it back to the aspect of surrender in the beginning of the book, where I talk about courage, surrender, how that requires courage, empathy, and vulnerability. And waiting meant that I was positioned in my becoming. However, there's a quote that I shared on social media, and it says, don't rush to be seated. Because when you rush to be seated, you bring the table to yourself, right? And we talk about how in the book of Psalms, David says, he prepares a table for me in the presence of my enemies, or just in simple terms, he prepares a table for me. So allowing God to do that, allowing God to prepare that table, to push your seat in and sit you well is key. And so that's what I learned in the process of writing. Looking through the different seasons as I wrote is how I really struggled with waiting, but how God helped me do that properly to where I ended up now in the moment writing the book. I hope that makes sense. I was able to see my life through the writing process and walk it out intensely to where I was able to see, wow, I didn't wait well here. Oh my goodness, I waited with resentment here. I waited impatiently here. And although I was doing that, this is what God was still doing in me. He was still gracious to continue guiding me. He was still patient with me.
That's a good input. And then probably my last part is that as you share the great success of doing this, there is always some challenges that you as an African immigrant, as a Black woman, and as a Mokorino, there are challenges that, and I think also we also know that writing is not it's not a very it's male dominated industry a lot. So you have all the odds that maybe works against you, but what are the challenges maybe you came across them, and maybe you might be able to share that maybe to prepare upcoming others?
I think the challenge was believing that my story was worth reading. Bringing it back, I talk about in one of the early chapters, feeling challenged and questioning if it was because I was a young girl. And so to touch on that piece, I believe it stemmed from, is my story worth reading because I'm a woman? Is my story worth reading because I'm an Akorino? Or my identity, that is a piece of my identity. And I talk about that in the book, how God walked me through owning who I was, and reveling in that he called me to be in this family. So and the quote I bring from the book is, what we tend to view as our greatest burden is actually what God uses to be our greatest strength, right? What sets you apart may seem like a burden, but it's actually what God is using to make you great. In the book, I talk about King David a lot, and how I'm sure for him, what he felt might have been a burden was being young, being pushed out, etc. But God used that to elevate him to be the king of Israel, who to this day, he's still revered as one of the best, one of the greatest. And so one of the challenges, at least for me, I faced was believing that my story was enough to hear and to read, as well as who would want to pick it up. So there was that split of, is it worth reading? And then, okay, if it's worth reading, who's my audience? And it goes back to surrender. And that courage to believe and trust that, okay, God, you called me to this. You're going to complete it. Once this book publishes, August the 3rd was a stressful day because that's when we went live and people could purchase. And the enemy came with lies. No one's going to purchase the book. No one's going to purchase the book. They're just going to celebrate you. However, today in church, pastor said that, we have to take down every thought into captivity. And so in that journey, the barriers were taking down those thoughts that the enemy was trying to bring, and even myself. Sometimes we can bring ourselves down, and believing that my story was important and it was to touch the people that God wanted to touch.
Wow. That's good to hear that, and it's very encouraging to.
Thank you.
We always listen to what is not going to work. The negative thoughts, sometimes they kind of dominate a lot in our mind than the positive ones. We told that we all want to be successful, but we don't want to do what successful people did. When they tell you the story, we just read a book of a very nice book with a very nice title that you're putting together. But when we hear the struggle behind that you went through for you to bring the final play on the stage, but what happened behind the stage is what a lot of us are not ready for.
Exactly. And I think it goes back to, I think God was speaking all around, as he always is. The sermon today was, don't judge people just don't judge at all, because we do not know the things that people are walking through. And I believe the season of COVID has really taught us as well not to do that. Because maybe the people we assumed had it together are the people that are now coming to us struggling. And it's our job as Christians and as people of God to not say, okay, whether you struggle too. No, it's our job to see them, right? To empathize with them.
Yeah. No, and that is the part that I feel like why I keep on insisting us coming back to this, having a continued part two of this, because that part of people trying to show they got it, they got everything together.
Right.
The inside is burning, and inside there's a lot of things going on. But and I think that is why I would recommend one. I see even if I haven't finished reading the book, I feel like if every parent will be able to read this book, if every adult will be able to read this book, if every a young person will be able to read this book, because of the process of becoming, that's when you're able to put all these tools that helps you to become in the journey of you becoming. And it is not that you just wake up and find that you are what you have, whatever you've got. There's some journey, there's some struggle that you go through, but you're able to show that don't be distracted. Focus on your final product, what you're looking for at the end.
Yeah.
No, just be aware there's some challenges. There's some things that you're going to face along the way. And I think I would say that Priscilla just shared also her link, contacts there. There's Facebook, there's Instagram, and you do, I would say also on LinkedIn, it's a good place because I always follow up on some few resources that you share there. My last question, and then I will have a few minutes to ask people from the audience if they have a question. Now, what next?
I'm a worship leader at church, and so a vision of mine has always been to record songs, and hopefully maybe a part 2 of Becoming. I think it definitely is going to continue as a series, God willing, all of this, God willing. And so that would probably be my next.
Awesome. Awesome. If anybody has a question, we would open this time, give this opportunity for anybody. You can either ask a questions, you can say a comments, you can add your input. And I don't know if Dad is still driving. I would want to hear. It's always my great mentor. I always love listening to his. I know he was driving when we talked. At the beginning. So anybody who is out there would want to add something related to
Hi, Geoffrey. This is Anne. I'm calling from Hawaii, and I'm going to be leaving very quickly because I'm going to another meeting. But I wanted to say I am so impressed with Priscilla. Thank you so much for sharing. This was absolutely the best message for all of us. And coming from a young Kenyan, an expert, a professional, you explained your craft in the best way I've ever heard.
Thank you.
But the nuggets that you share regarding relationships and family and parenting is what really sets you apart. I can see very well why you wrote that book, because you're actually speaking, you're walking the talk. So
thank you.
My name is Anne Gachuhi, and I have worked with several authors. I help authors actually publish, but this is not about me. It's about your book, which I am going to get just now, but I needed to say that. And thank you, Geoffrey, for putting this together. I have to go to another Kenyan meeting. If any of you knows of Jumbo List, you can join me there, but it's happening in the next few minutes, so I need to get out. But I wanted to say thank you. I have enjoyed this session tremendously. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Amen. Thank you.
Thank you, Anne. And for those who don't know Anne, she does websites and online marketing. So she's an expert. I've done business with her, but if you want to grow your business and expand your business, online expand business, and maybe before you go, you might be able to post your connects there. But I think before you go, I know we have a Jumbo. I think we have, like Anne says, there is an event coming up for the Jumbo in a few minutes. I don't know if Sarah is in the audience.
I don't know, Sarah and Teresa.
Yes, I'm here and I've been enjoying listening to Priscilla, and I'm really truly blessed. I'm a mother of 4, and just listening to the sentiment and the communication that Priscilla has been able to, write in the book. It's just great. I am looking forward to getting that book, and I'm going to also talk to other parents to get the book, because I believe this is what we need. This is what we need. We need to get somebody who has lived it, because they truly understand what our kids go through. And so thank you so much, Priscilla. Thank you, Jeffrey, for bringing Priscilla on. We look forward also to talking to Priscilla through our platform, EPAD, that it's, we host event here in New Jersey and targeting our youth here in diaspora. Again, thank you, Anne, for mentioning Jumbo. Jumbolis is a new company that is helping all immigrants business here in US and Canada, and we'll be launching tonight. You are all welcome to join us. I don't want to steal the show, but you are all welcome to join us at 7:30 Eastern Time. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Sarah. And thank you also for the great work you do, Sarah. We work together also with coordinating the program for the youth across the country.
Yes.
And we appreciate your great leadership and great your commitment to the youth program.
Thank you, Jeffrey.
All right. Yeah, we'll definitely join you. I hope the whole team that is here will be able to join us. Before you go, you might be able to post on the chat there the Zoom login.
I'll do that. Thank you.
Great. And the person, we can give you a time to say something, or maybe ask a question to our speaker.
Hello.
Yes, Rose, go ahead.
Hello, how are you all?
Good.
Good.
I'm sorry, I'm somewhere, so I don't mind, but I can be over there. So I know, otherwise, I'm Rose Jenga, for those who don't know me, and I'm so proud to be in this group meeting. Priscilla, thank you, and your family. We appreciate all the inputs that you give us to the Kenyans in this immigrant community. We appreciate all your help, and with our youth and everybody else who listens to your words of encouragement, we are able to push on, we are able to move on with life, and we appreciate you all. So I do work with mental health now for 3 years, and one thing I've been concerned is about the environment that we are bringing our kids in. I do believe it is one of the contributing factors why we are having a lot of mental health issues, and the connection of the environment, whether it is in schools, whether it is in the neighborhood, whether it is in the families that we live in. So my question or my input in this meeting is there a way that we can reach out to, either with the book that you have, the parenting part of it, to give our children a healthy environment to grow in, and that is including the school life they have. The neighborhood might be a little bit hard, but is there a way we can be helped in by at least looking at the neighborhoods that we are in, to see the conducive environments that we need to give our kids? Because initially in Kenya, we were ignorant about mental health. But when we're in this country, we are seeing even our Kenyan community kids being affected by the mental health. And it is real. It's not now an ignorance. It is in our doorsteps. So how can we improve, or how can we be helped to bring healthy environments for our kids in our homes? Because one thing, dysfunctional families are one contributing factors to mental health, because these kids, I do believe, they cannot speak out if there is a dysfunctional family. They didn't choose to be in that kind of family, but it's dysfunctional. So as parents, can we try, because at least I do say, as parents, we do have shock absorbers than our kids do, especially in this country. Can we be helped to use our shock absorbers when it comes to challenges in this country, challenges in our lifestyle, challenges in our families, so that we give our kids that environment which is conducive for them to grow? When they grow up, they'll understand a lot of things. But when they are young, there are a lot of things they're not understanding. And the way they are coming to adjust to those kind of things is by acting up, because they might not be able to say a word to their parents or something like that. but you see them reacting, getting to drugs because they are looking for other environments which will accept them. So I'm just urging to parents and Priscilla and your family, help us to see how we can provide these conducive environments to our kids. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rose, and thank you also for the great work you do. I think Rose also does a good job working with our youth. And I think I agree with her. The questions that she's asking, it's something that I feel like I agree with her. We need to have a platform to be able to discuss with parents. And Dr. Solomon Waigwa has been a great resource. I think we wish, when we have had also with IPAD, a discussion about some of the things we need to do as parents to create and welcoming a very good environment, a good, healthy environment for our kids, where they will be free to discuss and share their challenges. I believe in that conversation, we would be happy to have Priscilla to be in the conversation, like I mentioned earlier, because she's able to speak as a child from her child experience, and at the same time as a counselor, she has what she has learned, and at the same time as an adult.
Sure.
So I agree with Rose. We need to, and I think when she say, "Can you help us?" She's asking you, "Are you ready for the next conversation? Are you ready to be in the panel?"
Yes.
So
Definitely.
So Rose, we're gonna sit down back and be able to do a platform for the parents.
Thank you.
And I think for this time, I wish when I called for a parents meeting, because our biggest current challenge is to get the parents to attend the forums. We have speakers, we have people who are ready to help, and we have Rose initiating that discussion. So let's see, we can sit down, Rose, and we can be able to initiate a meeting with the parents. And the good thing now, we have Priscilla has already accepted, has said yes. And I can bet if we call Dr. Waigwa, he has always been generous with the time.
I think I'll just speak on the aspect of challenging with the parents is, at least I've seen this sense of, it's like it's daycare, right? It's a parent forum, but it tends to be, well, my kid's there, I've dropped them off, I've logged them in. But really it's more of, no, you needed to be a part of that conversation, because you can't separate parent and child, at least in most conversations. And so in most circles, I've encouraged parents in the sense of, maybe that might be the beginning step to healing with your child, is if they see you putting in that effort, because you're attending this forum to understand how to help them navigate these emotions or these outcries for help, right? And so for me, I'm thankful to have had parents who were active in the sense of, I'm going to attend and you can attend too, or a lot of the times it was, you're not going to attend, I will bring back the presentation, we can walk through it, and let's do this together. So there was that sense of responsibility to where I didn't have to attend all the things, but I still felt that, you know what, my dad is there learning how to better communicate with me. There's nothing more empowering than seeing your parent do that, especially if you're still open to having that relationship with them and work those things out before now it's the rebellion and they don't care because you haven't shown that you care.
See, that's what I'm talking about, Priscilla. That's why I'm talking about, we need you. We need to have this conversation again. And I think also to mention that I think my suggestion also is to get a book in which I have a teenager in the house, and almost another one is preteen. I think I would try to use this book as a part of our discussion in the evening. We can read about chapter by chapter. And just see if I can connect with them and they can be able to share if there is anything that they can relate to the book. And I hope most of the people will be able to do the same. I think because of time, if Dr. Waigwa, do you have a minute? I love listening to your wisdom.
I was muted here.
Okay.
I'm just listening to the conversation. It's very beautiful.
Would you have one word to sum it up? We love listening. We can't leave this forum without a word from you.
Well, I think I like the way the book was written, and of course it was written without my input. So that's very important. But when, as a parent, when I'm reading this, there's a lot of questions. Some questions arise, especially perhaps, Wachira, I don't know whether Priscilla, I don't know whether you have thought through this. You know that social media creators like Facebook and others, they are telling us that they have realized that social media, the children using that, there are developmental issues. And I think you said somewhere in like page, I think it's page 10 or page 9, where you talk about the foundations of, children growing up. Let me see. Yeah. And page 9 at the top, you quote the National Scientific Council on the Developing Child, and you say that the foundations of social competence that are developed in the first 5 years are linked to emotional well-being and affect a child's ability to function, things like being in school, forming relationships, and so on and so forth. So those foundations are very, very important. And now we are hearing that social media is not really very helpful when it comes to forging relationships. Maybe, in fact, there's a lot of research going on right now. I can't cite the research, but I think it was Elizabeth who brought this to my attention, that the social media is said to be not as helpful when it comes to forming relationships.
Yes.
Now, what do you think? What do you think we should do in terms of helping our young people who are they are stemmed into social media so strongly, yet there are issues now? Just imagine, just imagine now, especially at the research level. And what happens is that when people research, it gets time before that information reaches the people. We begin talking about it at the academe, at the intellectual level, before it even begins to be felt. That reality begins to become like gospel truth to people. If you go to the streets or with parents and you ask them, do you know that social media is not necessarily very, very helpful when it comes to, forging lasting relationships? There are developmental issues. People not know, because that's just researched. But you and I and others that are into academia and learning, we know that kids just using social media and not really getting out to interface with other children and play with other children and relate with other children but they just do social media. There may be issues. My question to you is, what do you think we can do in terms of helping children today realize that social media is not the only thing? We need real relationships.
Yes. So at least for me with my youth, when we meet, they know you can't say that you want a youth hangout, but be on your phone. So it's setting these boundaries and being very firm to where you're telling me you're bored. You're telling me I don't hang out with you, and calling that behavior out in the moment. So maybe there's a child who say, we never do anything fun, or I'm just bored all the time. Calling it out in action, saying, I've heard you say you're bored all the time. Help me understand what your phone does. What is it that is more entertaining? What would you suggest we do? Right? And there may be that lapse in thought because, like Dad said, there's that conditioning of we've gotten so used to getting entertainment here, right? Superficially, in a sense, that we can't even process what is fun. What is fun? Because when we are having fun, our minds are reaching for the phone already. Your child may say, or someone may say, well, I've always wanted to go to Disneyland. You spend all this money to go to Disneyland. Eventually, somewhere there will be a phone that's brought out. And it's kind of reconditioning that behavior. In psychology, we talk about behavior being conditioned. So if you have allowed, knowing you, the parent, whoever the guardian is, for phone usage to be used in the house when we're all sitting together, and there's that comfortable silence of everybody's on their phone, if that has brought you peace, now you may see the effects of it, because now there's not that ability to interface. And so I think in those moments, it's taking back that power and saying, okay, tonight we're not going to be on our phones. I know we've done this. I know this has gotten comfortable. My mom is very good at this. We will be sitting there and we've probably talked, and now we're just kind of just literally relaxing. And we'll find ourselves on our phones, and she'll be the first to say, okay, all right, that's enough now. Let's come back to each other. We've had that kind of break. Let's come back. So it's calling that behavior out, bringing that awareness, because if there's not that awareness, you can't have behavioral change. And that's what Dad is saying about the research is there's been that awareness that's been made, but it hasn't reached the people yet. It hasn't reached the children yet. It hasn't reached the parents. So now if the parents can become aware of this, Googling, researching, reading articles, now we can take back that power and begin, because we've had that awareness, we can know how to now implement behavioral change. And there may be that hesitancy there, because to change behavior, you're going to kind of have that, what is it called? That's that friction. And for example, weight loss, there's that friction there. You're tempted to eat this, you're tempted to do this. But I believe with social media, I use this word, it keeps coming to me, taking that power back. Social media is not going to be our source of connection. It is a source of connection positively to those around us or away from us, but in the family, in our friendships, let us interface with one another. So it's all about boundaries and behavioral change, and how the parent believes that should be implemented. Somebody said, I want to caution us not to be so much against social media. The addiction to social media by youth is likely a symptom rather than the cause of the problems we're talking about. Also, please realize that most parents here are proactive, but the many kids suffering out there are suffering as a result of the parents failing. Yes, I do agree. Social media is powerful. We can see with the protests, we can see with the George Floyd movement, social media moved that. However, in any platform, it's knowing what is truth and what is not, right? So social media is powerful. And just like the writer here has said, it can be an addiction. It depends on the severity of the usage. And that's how we measure addiction, right? If you can't function intellectually, you just can't live without something. But the symptom, yes, is the lack of interfacing with people. And the child may use social media as a way of escapism. I believe this is probably what the writer is trying to say here. that if they're not seeking or having that emotional connection, I'm going to go to social media where I feel connected. My friends are there. Things I like to watch are there. And it could be that they're watching amazing things, documentaries. I mean, I watch a lot of amazing, good things on social media, but it's a way for me to decompress. For the child, it could be a way of escaping the reality that they do not like, right? And bringing it back to the parent. Well, has the parent cultivated an environment to where the child feels heard, or maybe there's a need that is lacking? So I believe it's at 50-50 of we are acknowledging that there are some young people who are, social media is an addiction. It is hindering them from actively living and communicating with other people. Then there are the other half where it is that piece to where I can escape or I can connect and build my relationships this way.
Well, I would say this. I when you talk about the social media, I hear the people who create those social media and they're very selling out the idea to everyone. I don't understand the part that they don't allow their kids to use those social media, but yet they are the one who invented, they are the one who created it, but they don't allow their kids to use it. So it sends a very big message, and I appreciate Mr. Kahiga for that comment, but also what you guys have said. It calls us as parents to go back and find out how much of this social media is it building? Is it something that is helping them? And if it's not helping them, then what is the harm when you take it away? What's likely harm for you to? What are the kids gonna lose, or what are you gonna lose out of it?
I do see, though, as humans, we're wired for connection. So those social skills, I believe, is probably where Dad was touching on. Of social media can be used and it can be amazing. They're building connections. They're being advocates of things. But I have had young people who are amazing social media creatives, but you give them a mic, they don't even know how to speak. They're struggling to find those words because, and they will say, I'm used to being behind the screen. Well, we're going to work on that interfacing because your strength can't just be in that you're a good social media creative or you're just better behind the screen. No, we need to learn to interface. We need to move beyond the strength. Right? You find people who work in IT. A lot of people who tend to work in IT have, through research, have divulged that they chose that profession because they got so used to finding comfort in the screens that their form of interfacing looks different than what we may think. So I believe there's pieces to the pie, many pieces to the pie.
Well, I agree. You can't put it better than that. I agree with you, and I think because of time, I will say that this is a perfect time to stop here, so we have a good reason to come back.
Yes.
And do the second part too. And I want to say thank you so much, Priscilla, for your time.
Thank you.
I can't wait to see the person you will be in the next 5, 10, 20 years. I see a lot of wisdom and a lot of blessed to have a lot of tapping a lot of that from Dad and Mom. And even tapping a lot from your sister and your brother. So I see the final product, the best will be you.
Amen.
The final will be the best of you. Thank you so much for your time. I posted there for the book. I would want to see if you buy the book. And when we have a conversation next time, at least you can be able to share some comments and maybe ask some questions based on what you have read from the book.
Yes.
And also maybe having a way to I'm imagining if only we can duplicate a lot of Priscilla from that book in every community. We'll be done with this mental health issue because we'll have all these mental advocates in every home, and we all become experts of mental health, and that's what we're looking for. If we can be equipped with the right tools to deal with mental health, then I think there is no better way to help our young people and fix the problem in our community.
Amen.
Any final thoughts for you? Priscilla?
For me,
Yes.
I just would encourage people that everyone's on a journey to becoming. That journey looks different. The destinations look different, but the similarities that we're all becoming, we're all moving through our past experiences, our present experiences, to just grow into the people that God, the men and the women God has called us to be.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I want to say thank you. It's been over 1 hour, 30 minutes and so, but I feel like we just started. We could go over and over and over, but I humbly say thank you so much. And Dr. Waigwa, thank you so much for your generous time and every time and sharing your wisdom with us. The only person that I haven't had in our program is David, and I am sure we're gonna get him on board so that this our community here can be connected with the entire family. I think the next forum will be possible. I know Mom always says she doesn't like talking too much.
Right?
I would make a trip now.
Have her in the panel.
And I come to Kinangop Ranch so that I can have a conversation with Mom and learn more from her.
Yes.
There's a lot of wisdom and knowledge that you guys have been able to put together. So thank you so much. I hope that we will be able to reach out when we put our team together and reach out for the next session. I'm glad you've graciously accepted our invitation. And keep up with the good work. Everybody in the audience, please buy the book. There is
yes. So there's the electronic,
and then there is the cover option, right? So
yes.
And you can get them on Amazon. And I would hope that maybe the next time we have the conversation, we can have a couple of people reading those books.
We support all kind of businesses, and you don't have to have an account with Midwest Bank Center to get
stories you've heard before about African Americans in terms of gender. Bring your mind wide open that way, because from here we would like you to make a change to the environment.
Understanding and healthy dialogue.
He is married. He's married to his honey.
A non-profit organization serving first the small community.
To raise money for Kenya, we want to build 2 classrooms there.
Technology is one of those spaces that thrives on problem solving, and there's so many
address some of the economic disparities between the African community and the broader St. Louis community.
For Africa is here for you. They want to help you do this.
And so we have that
migrants on the resources available for entrepreneurs and business owners. I was the one who came here during winter. I almost cried in this house with the little one. But when I called, I remember when I called someone on average per year from 75 countries.
There's something a company wants this bot to be able to do.
American, I say, what is your last name? That is a reminder all the time. He is not so American as he thinks. The last name. So
I can definitely assist with
those resources, and we want to find a way how we can be able to connect those two. Those who are looking for information and those who have that information, we want to bring them together.
that the persistence and the drive that I've seen.
And I grew up in the late 40s, early 50s. And at that time, the polite term and other persons of African ancestry.
Should we talk about economics? I mean, I love this idea of why aren't we as African Americans
take something from this meeting and go and do something about it.